Good day to everyone and welcome to my presentation on peacebuilding process in the 21st century from the realist perspective. Here is a quick overview of my presentation today. Since the concept of peacebuilding was created, the research on it has been dominated by liberal constructivism or critical IR theories. However, recently these approaches have been put into question, especially because they were not able to explain the ineffectiveness of peacebuilding and countries bouncing back to conflict after peacebuilding processes have been implemented. At the same time, a little attention has been given to peacebuilding by the realist theory. The aim of my research is to examine the realist approach to peace, analyze what are the main assumptions related to peace building in the realist perspective, and then assess the usefulness of the realist theory in explaining peace building processes. My research questions correspond to the aims of the research described before. And I pose a hypothesis that actually focusing on states' interests as understood by the realists rather than values and institutions, something that was an area of focus of other approaches, can shed the light on problems of peacebuilding from a different perspective and can help to better understand situations where peacebuilding is ineffective. To start with, I would like to briefly speak about the notion of peace building. So actually this concept was created by Professor Galtung in late 60s and early 70s when he was studying different approaches to peace and came up with the differentiation for negative peace and positive peace. While negative peace was understood as the absence of violence, positive peace was understood as the absence of structural violence and the state of equality and justice in a society. He very often compared peace building to a healthy body that has the ability to produce antibodies and use them when a crisis happens. So for him, peace building was a process of introducing mechanisms conducive to peace into the structure and keeping them as a reservoir from which the system can take the resources afterwards when they are needed in a situation of conflict. Studies on peace building came as one of the main areas of peace studies and were developed since late 60s. Peace building is of course closely related to the concept of positive peace because it aims to address structural causes of a conflict. Because peace building is part of the peace studies, it is influenced to a large extent by the characteristics of the peace studies. Initially, peace studies were developed by people who were active proponents of pacifism, who were taking active participation in peace movements and who believed in the possibility of the absolute elimination of war, and this is what they propagated. Even if at the beginning peace studies tried to build their research on the positivism paradigm, later when critical approaches appeared, they immediately incorporated them in their research and analysis, because it allowed them for normative engagement, for promoting peace. Also, peace studies were characterized by interdisciplinarity and methodological eclecticism, which can be seen till nowadays. Even if we look at the major global peace conferences or conferences dedicated to peace building, we can see how a broad variety of actors they comprise. Actors ranging from academia to politicians, decision makers, but also peace educators, journalists, and even people of art. Peace building can also be characterized by this interdisciplinarity and different areas of focus. Currently, major approaches to peace building include liberal peace building, as well as constructivism and critical IR theories. However, recently there also has been a lot of criticism on these approaches, and the critics of these approaches, they usually said that peace building process is designed in a way that it supports the like-minded actors in the aid recipient countries, or in the countries affected by war. And from the other side, the other argument of the criticism was related to the fact that it is a way of view imperialism or colonialism, because in a peace building process, the countries of the West try to impose their values and their interests on other conflict-affected countries. Now let's go to the realist approach to peace. As all of you probably know, conflict, according to realists, is a natural and unavoidable phenomenon, because it is in the nature of individuals and states as well. When there is a conflict of interest, it can probably, there is a huge probability that it will lead to a violent conflict if it's not possible to resolve it in different ways. Realist theories focus on achieving negative peace, so the aims of peacemaking and peacekeeping. According to them, peace as something eternal is not possible and is not achievable. So for them, the aim is to end violence. Of course, realists focus on states as the main actors of international relations, which can be a challenge in peace building because, as we know, most of the conflicts nowadays are not interstate conflicts, but they are usually happening on the territory of one country or can be later internationalized. According to the realist, states value peace when they perceive that it is in their interest. And their interest can be, for example, economic growth that is associated with peace, economic growth that can, of course, lead to the increasing of a state's power and influence. And according to realists, a state preference for peaceful cooperation over violent conflict is always a strategic decision. There are differences in understanding peace between offensive realists and defensive realists. For offensive realism, the main state's interest is maximizing its power and expanding its power as much as possible. So for them, peace-building process in other states is not in the national security interest of the intervener, because peace-building process is a very long-term and costly process. It involves a lot of military and economic and financial resources. So it drains the power from a country, and they actually are usually against of foreign interventions in other states. For defensive realists, the main interest of a state is maximizing their security. And defensive realists are in favor of regime change if it leads to more beneficial balance of power. So defensive realists argue that a country can maximize their security by security cooperation with other states. And they say that when a country exports its ideologies to other countries, it actually helps them to maximize security, because they are making new allies that will not fight wars with them. Currently, there are not many studies on peace building itself that are conducted from the realist perspective. However, there are several studies on peace building related topics that have the realist logic in their argument. For example, with the criticism on development cooperation or development aid and its effects of the poor countries, a lot of research applying the realist perspective appeared. Here we can see an example of Fielden, who says that foreign aid and humanitarian aid is actually driven by geopolitical interests. For example, when a country wants to expand its power and gain political support, or as it was used a lot during the Cold War, a country wants to gain influence in countries that face ideological threats, and that's why it supports it with development aid. According to other realist, Luttwak, truce agreements remove the greatest incentive to negotiate peace settlement. In fact, they intensify and prolong warfare. According to him, war is the origin of peace. He means that foreign interventions and peace-building processes are actually harmful for achieving peace, because a country can decide to negotiate peace only when it feels exhausted by war, when one of the conflict parties is weak enough to decide to stop the war because it sees peace as more beneficial for it. Very often it is said that peace building, which uses other approaches, is not effective because Western ideas and values do not find their application in the local contexts. And here I would like to give an example that I had during a seminar, which is about the practice of blood money in African countries. So when Western countries come in the peace building interventions with Western ideas, and values, for example, with the rule of law, they're usually opposed with local traditions. For example, in many African countries, when a person from one community kills a person from another community, to restore the justice between these two communities, something called as blood money should be paid. So it is a contribution in material value. It can be money or it can be cattle, for example. And when it is paid to the affected community, the situation is solved. And when at the same time a person from authority comes to arrest the killer, it can actually exacerbate the tensions between the communities, and it can lead to further securitization of the situation. Another example of a situation, of a conflict where Western values were not accepted or understood, is the Bosnian War. So here there is a citation from Friedman who says that Sarajevo residents are hoping for that President Clinton will be their new Tito. We are telling them that the solution to their problem is a new constitution, and they are telling us that the solution to their problem is a new Tito. So it shows how for many situations values is not the area of focus, but rather a power that can bring conflict down. And here we go to the conclusions. In short, realist theory can explain how states maximize their security interest by engaging in peace-building processes. Unfortunately, realist theory does not offer solutions to the achievement of positive peace because it's just outside of its scope. But it can help explain why peace-building does not work or leads to conflict reoccurrence. Assumptions of the realist theory can be applied on a local level, for example, through an ethno-realist approach. Currently, there is a tendency to go beyond one paradigm, and there is an adaptation of various approaches and methodologies, and it can actually be a way forward to use a realist perspective in combination with other approaches, focusing on both negative and positive peace. Thank you very much